Good evening and welcome to welcome to the Velocity of Now with me, your host Thomas Sheridan. It's the 26th of August 2015, and wow, it's a great week. It's been an amazing time in alternative media, and for me personally, and for us getting our information and our ideas out there. And I hope you're all keeping well. You're enjoying your summer. Those of you that are actually lucky enough to have good weather. And well, tonight I didn't know what to talk about, and so I posed some questions out there, and asking you for suggestions. And I think I'll just run through them all. So it's a very much an open format tonight, very easy going. And a lot of you have asked me about things that I wouldn't normally talk about. So that's nice of you. Excuse me, I'm actually I'm not long home from it. I was in Dublin today, and I'm not long home, so I'm actually eating a sandwich while I'm talking. So ignore me. And as I said, it's the 26th of August 2015. The Velocity of Now on the Reality Bites Radio Network.com network, and Paul, as usual, at the controls, being very professional. I hope I have a good signal tonight. It sounds crystal clear here. And those of you who've been paying attention will know that I got some mega exposure this week. My Blind Spot movie documentary film was picked up by, well, first what happened was a journalist called Amy Glendeling from England called me a few weeks ago, and she said that she was really impressed with my film Blind Spot. Is there a serial killer in Manchester? Which I went to Manchester and investigate the unusually high numbers of people that died in the canal there, and the inconclusive coroners and police verdicts, which was first brought to light by Professor Craig Jackson at the University of Birmingham. And so I went over there, I did a bit of investigation, came to the conclusion that something wasn't right, came back, made a film about it, and she had seen it and was very impressed by it, and she interviewed me. Now I expected nothing to come of it, not because of her not producing it, but because in the mainstream media is a funny thing. You can have a journalist. You see, people are very quick to pick on actual journalists, but it's not always their fault. Journalism is a strange thing. A journalist can have passion in a mainstream paper, integrity, and a real drive for a story, but there's a kind of a brick wall called the sub-editors and the editor's desk. And that's usually where so much of the censorship happens. A lot of it has to do with political mandates. They don't want to piss off the politicians in the country or in the region because that'll stop them from getting exclusive interviews with politicians. They don't want to piss off the police and other things like that. But fair play to the Manchester Evening News. They let the story run, and it just went mega. The Daily Mirror picked it up, which is one of the biggest papers in the UK, and it's been picked up all over the place now. And Metro picked it up in the UK, and the story's huge. So it's a strange one, because at once there's a part of me when I went public about this was worried, because if it is a psychopathic serial killer, they might want to play cat and mouse with the cops. But you have no choice going public with these things, because what happens also is it makes people much more vigilant of their own personal safety. So it's harder if we're dealing with a serial killer for the serial killer to actually find victims, because people have a consciousness awareness of danger. So that's the main reason I went out with it. I spoke to these people and I said, look, if this story is going to blow, it has to go massive. It has to go mega, because it cannot be just like in one or two, papers. It has to be major. And it's gone major. It's massive. It's probably the biggest exposure I'll ever get, and it's catapulted me like way into the big time now in terms of my profile. My picture and my name is all over the world now, and it's with something that I'm cautiously glad to be connected to, for the reasons is I don't want to goad this creature or these creatures behind this thing into doing more, but at the same time too, if it makes people more vigilant and saves lives, I'm happy. If it's a disturbed individual, they won't play the cat and mouse game with the police. Now, there's two reasons why I did this. One was, firstly, I've been very interested in this stuff for years, and most of the work that I've learned about psychopathology has been actually reading criminal profiles in books by people like Colin Wilson and many others. And it just seemed to me that this required old-fashioned criminal profiling, psychological profiling, and I put that out there. And secondly, and this is like important, I think. I want the families of the victims to know that people actually care, because it's quite sad and heartbreaking to see how some of them feel. They not only are their lives and the family being torn asunder, and the heartbreak of these parents and the siblings of these young people have died. That's bad enough, but there's also a frustration that they feel that the system doesn't care. They have to remember that just because the system can be cold and standoffish when they're concerns doesn't mean that people don't care. And one thing that's really, made my heart sore is that the fact that the overwhelming majority of the comments, both on the newspaper sites and on all the Facebook pages, were overwhelmingly supportive of my hypothesis, my theory. And so that gives the families a sense of, we won't say justice, but one step closer to closure, I hope, on the subject, to use an appalling politically correct term. But that's what happened this week. Basically, I went mega, and I won't, the only reason the mainstream went big time with this story is because it's a mainstream issue. They were surprisingly kind to me. Well, I won't say surprisingly, but I was pleasantly surprised how kind they were to me so far. That's almost unknown in this scene. Anyone from the alternative scene. Now some of you are going to say, "Oh, it's because Sheridan's won them." Anyone from it's not because I'm one of them. It's because I've kept my nose dirty with the right things and clean with the right things. I haven't, put woo-woo stuff connected to this. It was very straightforward and pragmatic. I do like the woo-woo stuff, but that's a different thing. And I did good work on it. And the film I made, the little short film I made, I tried to make it artistic as possible, not because I was trying to be sensationalist, but because I know how media works. I know how communication works, that you can make a very cold analytical film and no one pays attention. But if you can make it in an artistic, atmospheric style, even though it's dealing with a real life, unfortunate, horrible situation, it catches people's attention because that's the nature of the world we live in. Now, it just goes to show you that how powerful art is, because art does reach the human subconscious in a way that straightforward, cold, analytical facts don't. And that was the reason why I made that video with that artistic slant. Now, I hope you continue to keep an eye on this story, and I hope people in Manchester continue to be vigilant, but not be fearful. That's the important thing. I don't want anyone to be afraid. Like, Manchester's a fabulous place, and I don't want to give the impression that it's a dangerous city or a nasty city or anything like that. So it's actually a wonderful place. It's a cracking place to visit. People there are very, very nice. It reminds me of how Dublin used to be. People are much more friendly there than they are in Dublin now. And it's not all about money. It's not all about, making getting rich or anything like that. It's a different atmosphere there, and it's more healthier, and it's a great place to socialize. And I would encourage, just because of this situation, don't boycott Manchester. Go even bigger numbers, but make sure when those vast canal waterways that are in the city centre, just be careful. But go to all the pubs, go to all the clubs, go to all the restaurants, and support the businesses and all the entertainment and the people of Manchester. Support them. Keep that keep the city buzzing. Don't go into a state of paranoia or anything like that. And we'll solve this problem one way or another, because it's got to stop. I'm hearing some numbers now that they think it may be as high as 80 or 90. This is out of control. The 60 number I gave was actually now looking like a very conservative number. There's something not right here. At the same time, too, don't live in fear and enjoy the city, celebrate the city, celebrate the people in it, and continue to go on. So that was that. So that's, it's a bit surrealist knowing that my name and face is now flashed all around the world. But if it saves lives, that's a good thing. So I hope you're all keeping well, and I hope things are good. I travelled across Ireland today. I went to Dublin and back, and it's you hear people talk about climate change and all this kind of weather modification and all those kind of things, but something quite remarkable happened, and it's not the first time I've noticed this. I've seen it many times over the years, particularly taking the train as opposed to using the road. And the River Shannon in Ireland, in the middle of Ireland, which is it's the longest river on these islands, either Great Britain or Ireland. It stops the weather. I don't know what it does, but the climate on one bank, and it's only like 100 yards to the next bank, is completely different than one side than the other. The climate is different, and you're actually physically aware on the Connacht side, which is the west side where I live, of the Atlantic weather fronts pounding the northwest and the west coast of Ireland. And on the eastern side, it's much warmer, drier, and humid. When it's not humid, it's drier and calmer. And even the banks of the rivers are different. You just look, one side is Leinster and one side is Connacht, and you really see two different kingdoms. And the whole dividing thing is the climate, really, when you really look at it. And the river does that. The river, I've gone over that river and looked up into the sky and literally seen the clouds stop at the river. So it just goes to show you that nature still rules the roost. Nature is still supreme. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight here. As you know, some of you have heard me hinting about, I've been traveling around making a documentary film for someone else on Ireland and megaliths and mythology, and I've started to re-examine very, very in-depth Irish mythology, and I've come to two conclusions, which I will present in a proper format at some, in the near future. Is that I believe that this part of the world, including Ireland, Britain, Doggerbank, was all connected to one giant land. Well, it was proven, one giant landmass extending from Denmark all the way down to Iberia, which connected Britain and Ireland and the Isle of Man, especially, which is a big part of the story, to Denmark and mainland Europe, and what we call the Low Countries today of Holland and Belgium. And about 6,500 years ago, or 6,000 years ago, something happened that caused what I believe was a comet, but it also caused not only a raining of comets and debris down on these islands and this part of Europe for a long time, but also created a tsunami when a bank off the coast of basically a shelf, a continental shelf of the bank of Norway collapsed and caused not just one but regular tsunamis. And Irish mythology is really talking about a lot of that, and I'll present that in an upcoming format at some point in the near future. And I'm looking at the questions that you sent. Let's start with the questions you sent me. And I'm looking at one, and there's a chap called Klaus, and he asked about the Celtic Vedic connection. Well, it's absolutely fascinating, and about something that's always amazed me. Now, before we start talking about Celtic and Vedic and Celtic and Irish, we have to distinguish that Celtic probably doesn't exist. Yes, there was a group called the Celtoid that the Romans and the Greeks named them, but that basically meant foreigners. Now, they had, just like you have archetypes that are common to different cultures, the tarot is a great example of that. You also have archetypes that are called Celtic archetypes. Doesn't necessarily mean that the same people brought them across Europe from the east to the west into Ireland. I've never believed that, ever. I believe a lot of these things developed independently, and that that a lot of this stuff is archetypal. Now, the connections between the Irish and the Vedic world, it's staggering. There was a book back in the 70s by a guy called Professor Miles Dillon. It was called Celts and Aryans: Survival of the Indo-European Speech and Society. It came out in 75, actually. And he pointed out that there was a parallelism between Irish and Hindu law books. Both of them, the work of a privileged professional class. In the Irish case, it was the Breton laws, is often surprisingly close. It extends not merely to form and technique, but even to diction, and that's remarkable. We're talking about something going back thousands of years. There was another guy called Professor Calvert Watkins at Harvard, and he argued that all the Celtic linguistic remains. Only Old Irish represents the extraordinary archaic and conservative linguistic tradition within the Indo-European. It is nominal and verbal systems, he says, and is far truer reflection of Indo-European than classical Greek or Latin, meaning that Irish is actually older. Than Latin or Greek in terms of its connection to Indo-European languages. And it can be compared only with, and we're talking Irish now and Welsh, with Sanskrit from the Vedics and Hittite of the Old Kingdoms. And that's amazing. Now, he gives a demonstration of the similarities between Old Irish and Sanskrit, and he refers to things like that the Arya, which is freeman in Sanskrit, from which the word Aryan comes from. In Old Irish, the congregate it means a noble. Narib, good in Sanskrit, is the congregate of Norib, holy in Old Irish, from which the word Niamh or saint comes from. Minda, which means a physical defect in Sanskrit, it compares to Menda, one who stammers in Old Irish. Namas, the word for respect in Sanskrit, compares with Nemed, respect or privilege in the Old Irish. Baldur, deaf in Sanskrit, compares with Bodhar, deaf in Irish. And another one that's very recognizable is Raj, which means king in Sanskrit, compares with Ri in Irish, and continental Celtic Rex or a X, and the Latin Rex. So, and there's other things too. The sacredness of rivers. That's another common one as well. And the goddess Danu seems to appear everywhere in one form or another, comparable to similar concepts in the Vedas. The Danu was the good god of the Vedas, the Persians, and the Hittite myths. The name Danu, and this is what means divine waters, and that's very similar to how the sea is. So it's identical to the Ganges. So that you have the Irish goddess of the Boyne, the River Boyne, where all where the main centre Tara and all that stuff is. Boand is the exact same archetype as the Hindu Ganga, which is the Ganges get its names from. And there's so much stories of what we call Celtic, to use what Klaus asked for. Celtic in the same idea. Where you'd have the story of the Ganges, where they cremate people and put their ashes in them to float them to the sea. This also ties into the tsunami myths, by the way, which I'll explain another time. The the ancient Irish used to burn the bodies and put them in the rivers like the Shannon and the Boyne. The same idea. Now, the first conclusion that people tend to jump to is, wow, so the Irish are the purest remaining repository of Vedic culture because it wasn't interrupted or wiped clean in between by Greek, Roman, and so on. Well, not necessarily, and I disagree with that. I don't believe that there was some great migration from India that ended up in Ireland that we call the Celts. In my book, The Anvil of the Psyche, I talk about something called neurological form constants. These are called phosphenes. When a human being is deprived of light and put in absolute darkness for a while, they start to see shapes and lights in front of them. It's called the prisoner cinema because prisoners locked in confinement also see these things. These shapes appear to human beings as basically the same, no matter what human race we are, all over the world. They're the classics, the spiral, the kind of like the single eye shape, the squiggly line, the hatching that's like diamonds connected together. It appears, and then the horizontal and vertical squiggly lines. That appears. Language, I believe, is the same. So instead of having a neurological form constant, we have a kind of a linguistic form constant. And this would explain now why the word, say, the root word of mother, ma, appears all over the world. And there's no way that people from Micronesia were traveling to Ireland and people from Cornwall were traveling to the Native Americans. I'm not saying it's not possible, but the reason why ma is the common root word for mother all over the world is the same reason why if you put a drum in front of a newborn baby, their instinct is to bang it. It's an archetype. It's a form constant. It's there. It's rooted deep within us. And my contention is, and this is quite controversial, is that the Irish culture, the mythology, is contemporary to the Vedas. Now, the Vedas are so old that we have basically two very good sources. One is Alexander the Great commissioned a genealogy of the Hindu dynasties, and they went back 150 something generations to discover that basically the Vedas were at least 8,000 years old. This was also confirmed by some of the testing of the Mahabharata documents found in Vedic monasteries in India. They were shown to be near 10,000 years old. So I believe that human civilization, and come on, it has to be, look at the weathering on the Sphinx, is far, far older, perhaps 12,000, 13,000 years old. More. Look at Göbekli in Turkey. 12,000, that's the academic number. I believe it's much, much older. And I believe those Irish mythological myths, a lot of them are rooted in the truth. Some of them are very powerful allegories, which I'll explain to you in later shows. Just like the Vedic ones, by the way. And they're not connected, I mean, literally through human beings. They're connected through the subconscious, to the collective unconscious. So yes, to answer Klaus, the Vedic Celtic, and I put Celtic in quotation marks, is an incredible connection. Amazing. Which the British Israelites, by the way, destroyed because they were obsessed with connecting anything Irish and British with the Middle East and the tribes of Israel. And they completely ignored the fact that the real connection was Vedic and Celtic, because these religious fanatics who come out of monotheism do not like to accept on it, because basically these are polluted ideas, and I'm not saying the Middle East are not, but here they are. They become corrupted once they leave the Middle East. That we all had to fit into the Bible, which is nonsense. It was the archetypes, it was the form constants, it was the base, collective unconscious of the human race where these things fostered and gave birth to these ideas, which shows that we're all truly connected as human beings. Put a drum in front of any baby in front of the world, and their instinct is to bang that drum. Now, the next question here is by John, and John says to me, I would like to hear about your modern take on feminism. Oh, that's a good one. I've been thinking about feminism a lot lately. Now, feminism, I used to think that feminism, look, okay, let's get the whole terms of the ism out of the way, right? Of course, men agree with the fact that a woman doing the same job as a man should get paid the same salary. That's a no-brainer, okay? That a woman should be given special dispensation in terms of employment for having a baby. No-brainer again. We all agree with that. That's not feminism. That's not women's rights. That's just human decency, okay? Now, the reason why we didn't have that in the past and why the modern women's movement had to come along was basically because of first it was religion, and secondly it was economics. And economics in terms of physical policy of governments who wanted extra taxation, and they came up with this idea that women going to work so they could double the tax intake. That's what that was really about. Now, so human decency aside, women should get exactly the same salary as a man at work, and that women should have a special dispensation for pregnancy and childbirth. We agree with that. We'll call that human decency. Aside from that, I find most of what else is in modern feminism absolutely repugnant, because it's run by aristocrats. Just like any of the isms, it's formulated and comes from aristocrats. They don't even care about women. I'll give you, just look at the main leaders, like Gloria Steinem. She never had a job in her life. She didn't have to work. And when she did work, she volunteered to be a CIA mole in college, spying on her college students. That should tell you about the caliber of that creature, okay? That's the first thing. Secondly, I started to think, well, is modern feminism bonkers, and is the older stuff better? And then I thought about where the feminism came from. And it came from the 1960s. Now, these feminist women came out of the peace movement, and they were the Gloria Steinem ones. And here's the irony. At the same time that they were calling poor working class males bastards who were drafted and sent to Vietnam of no choice of their own, as these wealthy, well-to-do American socialites were calling those poor guys who had no say in their lives, calling them baby killers, they were actively involved in getting Roe versus Wade put through to get as many abortions as possible. And that was the 60s. So some poor guy coming back from Vietnam with post-traumatic stress, who was sent there on the draft, comes back to America, and there's Gloria Steinem and a bunch of these other wagons waiting for him, calling him a baby killer. Calling him a baby killer at the same time. They want basically abortions on demand everywhere. Now, I'm actually pro-choice. I'm not anti-abortion. I'm actually pro-choice. But I'm just saying that was the seed in which that toxic flower gestated. It had nothing to do with equal pay. It had nothing to do with special dispensation for pregnancy. It had everything to do with developing an abortion cult for aristocrats. It also had everything to do with driving wedges between men and women. Now, modern feminism has completely and totally failed. You could not point to an ideology that has completely and utterly failed. Completely failed. Firstly, you have the idea that they literally need laws to get them to push what they want through. You have like American, you don't go to university, don't go to college, get a trade unless you really have your heart set on it. But don't on a degree you need to go there. But they have these university professors all over the place now looking for microaggressions and warning women of triggers. And you have all this carry on. It's about destroying relationships between men and women, keeping them apart. The majority, actually all hardcore feminist activists are women who are incapable of having a relationship with a man that's successful. That's what drives them to it. Now, there's lots of women who don't have relationships with men and are cool with it. They've decided it's probably not for them, and that they're cool with it. But they don't they don't feel bitter about it, and they don't wage war on men. They've just come to a kind of an almost Zen-like relationship with themselves to say, maybe a relationship isn't for me. I have a child, or I've been in relationships. Maybe I'm just happy on my own. And that's really healthy. Absolutely, that's so healthy. It's better than the old days where women were expected to get married. Have a man take care of them. The feminists are not like that. The ones who are calling men misogynist and all these names, they absolutely crave in their subconscious a loving, meaningful relationship with a man, but they know that there's something so highly disturbed with them that they cannot attain it. It's like homophobia in many ways, and so it's like maleophobia, and they develop a hatred of men because they know that there'll be no one to ever love them the way they want to be loved. And that's what drives them to be the way they are. That's what drives them to be the way they are. And this now becomes part of an excuse culture. Now, if you see so many of them are overweight, that's because if they were given the choice between diet and exercise and blaming men, in this blame culture, it's easier to blame men and misogyny. So many of them can't reform. Most of them can't. None of them can have a decent relationship with a man. It's not that there's anything wrong with them. It's men who are fucked up. It's all about transference, the transference of their own issues onto others rather than working. The answers are always within, never without. It's not ism, it's in him or in her. And this is what's wrong with the modern feminists and all feminists, is that instead of looking into their souls as individuals and finding a solution, they don't. They want an external fix. And that's always doomed to unhappiness and misery. It's always, everything that's wrong with you always is fixed from in. Which brings me to the next aspect. Men are fighting back against this nonsense. But they're not fighting back by rioting. They're doing it with comedy. And there's one thing a feminist cannot do is produce good comedy. They're terrible at it. Where it's very they're so bad at it, they don't even know how easy they are to make fun of. And so a lot of men are just laughing at them, joking at them, creating memes about them, very funny Facebook posts about them. And they've no comeback to it. So they've lost the propaganda war. I don't agree with these like men going their own way now kind of movements. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think men should run away from relationships with women. It's not right for women who are healthy and want a good relationship. It's not good for men either. And men and women, gays and straights, whatever. But relationships when they do work, can be very, very good for both people. They can pool their consciousness, but if it doesn't work, that's okay too as well. But there's no harm in looking for that and seeing if it works. I mean, the problem today, and has been, is that people rush too far into them. In the United States, the divorce rate is It's something like 2 out of every three marriages in the United States now end in divorce. I mean, would you gamble your money on any other odds in life that were that poor? Would you? So that's how I feel about the feminist thing. I don't think it's helping anybody, and worst most of all, I don't think it's helping the feminists because it's externalizing something that they have inside them that they need addressing, and they're not working on. Yes, there are misogynist men out there. Yes, there are men who slap women around and treat women appallingly. But there are also women who are absolutely disgusting too, as well, and treat decent men horrifically. And that's just the way life has always been. It's always been that way. Guy Paul here asked me about the Premiership football impending implosion and feeding us more bread and circuses. Well, what's happening with the Premiership football, soccer to you Americans, the English Premiership, and the big European leagues, England, Germany, Italy, the big clubs from countries like Holland, Scotland, like Ajax in Holland, and you have the big clubs in Scotland like well, it's only one now, Celtic, and the big clubs in France like Paris Saint-Germain, and then the big leagues like Spain and so on, and the big clubs in Greece and Turkey and Portugal and everywhere else. They're moving towards franchising, but the British are leading it. Just like maybe not the Europeans as much, but what they want to do in England is it's absolute. The writing is on the wall when Manchester City bought a club with the New York Yankees called New York City, playing at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx, to create a big professional soccer club in New York. I think the eventual aim is for Manchester City to move to New York, just like American baseball franchises move from one city to the other. That's what's happening. And it should make it very interesting when you have, like, say, Liverpool become the Red Bull Reds of Dubai. When this world, the Super Bowl World League of Soccer that's coming. I'm telling you, that's coming. And you see all these people who are obsessed with their British soccer team, especially the Irish ones. How will they justify it when their beloved Man United ends up in LA and is called the Red Soccer Kickers? And it's coming. That's what's coming. You may say, oh, they'll never let it happen, but they just look at baseball. Anyone who doesn't believe it will happen, look at the history of the Brooklyn Dodgers. And the writing was on the wall with franchises. And as part of an upcoming global soccer league, when Man City joined together with the New York Yankees baseball and set up New York City FC. Richard asked me about Royal Raymond Rife. I don't know anything about him except I know he's a man who invented these kinds of machines to cure cancer. He also asked me about Nikola Tesla. Yeah, Nikola Tesla. A lot of people seem to have this, especially the New Agers, have this idea that Nikola Tesla has been shunned from history. Nikola Tesla is very well known. He wasn't in my high school science books, but when I did my first year of electronic engineering, he was in the course, and I already knew about him anyway. He was already famous. There's a unit of measurement named after him, and Nikola Tesla is not an unknown scientist that was been shunned by society. He was absolutely a genius. There's no doubt about that. And all you have to do, and I've actually been to his hydroelectric station on Niagara Falls, and it's amazing looking. The actual building itself looks like something from a Fritz Lang movie. It's really incredible. And there's a big statue of him there. He's known. He's famous. What happened with him was he went bonk. He was a weirdo. He lived in a hotel in New York, and he was an oddball, and he became incredibly racist towards the end of his life. He was writing all kinds of eugenics type articles, openly racist, about how people who are not scientifically perfect should be eliminated, and that begins with like lesser races and all this nonsense. I'm drinking a bottle of beer here. All this nonsense, and he ruined his own legacy. He blew loads of money. he was a lot of the reason why he's not known is because it's his own fault. He's a terrible business person. He was always fighting with people, and he was a racist. And yeah, sure, there was J.P. Morgan screwed us all out of that the transmission system that he was developing at Wardenclyffe in Long Island to transmit free energy, but he didn't do himself any favors. And so Nikola Tesla, yeah, he was genius, but he was also a dick, and that was the end of that. X Factor, some guy won't care about that. Tulpas, a guy called Joseph Tulpas. I've spoken about it loads of times. Tulpas, yeah, fascinating. The idea of creating a thought form. That's the Buddhist idea that if you, in fact, now that we're having such amazing results with the dream thing, at some point I'm going to plan. I have a plan for the future. That's what makes this show so exciting. That we're going to actually try and create tulpas. I'm actually going to come up with an obscure place somewhere, and we're going to try and create a tulpa through our intention. We're going to try to create something, and I have an idea for it, and it's quite clever. And so we'll just like we tested the dream. Should we say the waking dream or the dream life experiment or the sleeping life experiment? Let's see if we can do things like that, because this show is as much as a what's the word? A laboratory as it is an information show. You're part of this project, and we all work together. Someone said psychopathy. Oh my god, with those you care about. So if something I've been, spoken so much in psychopathy and psychopaths over the years, I'm actually kind of sick of it. But I can't say. Well, there is more things I could say. I could phrase the same kind of things differently, but there hasn't been any real research, any real groundbreaking anything since I wrote Puzzling People. Really, no way. There was the research in Canada that on the speech of psychopaths that was fantastic. But since then, and there was also the one about how they have a poor sense of smell. But apart from that, has been nothing. It's been a wasteland of new research. So there's not a lot really to add there. But a chap called Felix has asked about psychopathy within those you care about. I'm assuming it's someone you look. Well, look, someone is either a psychopath or they're not. Anyone can have psychopathic type traits. Everyone does at some level. That doesn't make them a psychopath. Just like we all commit sin, it doesn't make us the devil. Just we all get drunk and went binge drinking doesn't mean we're all alcoholics. So if the person's a full blown psychopath, there's nothing you can do about it. No, absolutely nothing. I'm being honest with you. If and it's not going to be good for you being around them. If they have psychopathic tendencies, they may be a proto-psychopath. So then you have to kind of think to yourself, well, what made them that way? Was it trauma in childhood? Was it some kind of drug abuse? You have to, again, but you see, this is the thing, Felix. We can't save the world. And we can't save really others. I mean, that's one thing I've learned about my life is that, I've had friends who were like terrible drug addicts, and they had the most loving parents, and that you could just if you could see the anguish in their parents' face trying to get their son off heroin, and the heartbreak it was causing them, and eventually they came to the resolve that no matter what they did, they couldn't do anything about it. Just couldn't do anything about it. And it's because only at the end of the day, only that drug addict or alcoholic or person with terrible negative traits can do anything about it. It always comes from within, never from without. So if you're dealing with that in your family, you have my sympathies, but I don't know. It's I don't have the answers except just to protect yourself. And I'm looking up here. Jay, in my actor buddy in Hollywood, he wrote, "Oh, about Grigory Rasputin." That's an interesting one. A fascinating character. I've read so much about him that actually suggests he was a great guy, and there was so much negative stuff put out there about him. I think he had a lot of incredibly good attributes. Now, when he was murdered, there was this comment that went around St. Petersburg that he was the only peasant allowed anywhere near the Romanovs, and they killed him. We all know the story. He helped cure the Tsarina's son, and he was probably shagging the Tsarina as well. In fact, when he was drunk once, he took his penis out of his balcony in St. Petersburg and said, this is the tool that repairs Mother Russia," which is kind of funny. But he was definitely a shamanic mystic. Whether he was a black magician or a white magician or a good guy or a bad guy, I don't know. He seems to be a mixture of both. He definitely had tremendous powers and abilities to hypnotize and spellbind people. He also probably could have saved Russia from. I think he was destroying the Romanovs. I don't think he had any love for the Romanovs. He was basically sabotaging them from within. But these people are crazy. The Romanovs are Prussians as well. They're obsessed with that shit. And the 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 Romanovs were completely mad. They got a letter when they were first married, Tsar Nicholas and Alexandria, which told them a remarkable prophecy that would come true, and everything the way it was predicted by this previous mystic. 100 years previous, every single thing to the word had come true, and they said that the present Tsar Alexandria was like Job of the long suffering, that he would be the last Tsar and his wife the last Tsarina of Russia. And so they went bonkers. They literally filled the Romanov court with all kinds of mystics and everything like that. And he's still a complete enigma. One of the most, I think, I have the belief that druids do still exist and they're working out there for us, but I don't think he was one of them. I think he was he was like a Merlin, but I don't think he was a druid. I think he was a shaman, from central Russia, and he had tremendous power. We know so little about his upbringing. That's the problem, and he used that. I think his ultimate mission was to end the Romanovs, but I certainly don't think he wanted to bring in communism or Bolshevism or whatever ended up there. But yeah, it was an amazing story. There's still so much to learn there. So, and a guy called Hayden, who writes Post My Walnut, he said Mel Gibson is up to his crazy shenanigans again. I love the Hollywood and other stories, so do I. Poor Mel Gibson. I know he gets such a hard time and he's done some terrible things. Well, he hasn't done terrible things. He's said some terrible things. Made fantastic movies. You can't deny his talent. He has a nutty father. That's a problem. And his father's like this pre-Vatican II. If you don't know what Vatican II is, I think it was 1967. The Catholic Church reformed, and I got rid of things like the Latin Mass and a lot of the old crazy stuff. Like when a woman gave birth in the Catholic Church, she had to give penance for polluting the world with another child, and it's weird shit like that. And they got rid of all that kind of nonsense. And it was expected that they would actually get rid of Humanus Vitae, which was the prohibition on contraception for Catholics, but they didn't get rid of that. Anyway, his father's a nutcase who, I don't know if he's still alive, but he was raised by a crazy father who's still like living in the Middle Ages. It's like a Middle Ages version of Catholicism. Now, I know a few people who've met Mel Gibson and said he's a really nice guy, down to earth, great professional, great guy to work with. very friendly, very polite, very easygoing. But he's been infected by his own man. This is the problem with religion. It becomes like an infection, like a disease, and he's been infected by his own man. Now, those when it's a weird kind of story. He was on the. He was on the. He was like had this Mr. Perfect family man, built a Catholic church on his property and everything. This pre-Vatican II Catholic church, and then suddenly he leaves his wife of many years for this this really sexy Russian chick, and he's banging her, and then suddenly he's an alcoholic. This is weird again. I see. Did she do something to him? You know, and then he's back. He's boozing. He's on the gargle, and something happens. He has a kid with her. Throws him out of the house, and he starts calling her up and making phone calls to her. And some of these tapes are unbelievable. He sounds possessed on them. He's going like this on this kind of thing, and he's calling her, "You slut, you whore," and all this kind of thing. And then, like one of them, he says, "I saw you last week. You're wearing. You know what's going to happen?" And he said, "I hope you get raised by a pack of N-words." And I couldn't believe, what kind of, she was recording these things. He came across looking very, very, very bad. And I don't know. I don't know what the story is. A guy's a genius, and Hollywood is evil. Hollywood. I mean, I know there's lots of people in Hollywood are nice and everything, but like, I have mates are going out there to get jobs in acting. So I do come around and wonder. I just be careful and just use it for what it is and get out, and don't let it infect you too much. I guess it's like the church. There's lots of Catholic priests who go into the church who are good guys, have no desire to do anything bad, and because when they enter the Catholic machine, some of them their psyches become infected and they go mad. Julie, why is romance dead and who killed it? Pornography. Pornography killed romance, Julie. Now, I've been against pornography, but there's different kinds of pornography. The pornography of years ago, movies like Emmanuel that came out of France, and what they call female feminine porn, are really there's nothing wrong with them. And there's nothing. I don't care if you watch any kind of porn you want. Once it's not the person in the video is not being attacked or murdered or a child or something. But pornography. See, what happened was pornography was originally erotica. That's what I say. I like erotica is a wonderful, beautiful thing. You just have to look at Klimt paintings. You look at a Klimt painting and you see that's romance, like the kiss. It's erotica. It's erotica. Now, what happened was when the Emmanuel films came out, I know kind of things about mainstream. They were very soft porn erotica. It creates addictions. Suddenly, someone would get really turned on by those films. They'd watch Emmanuel on the Ferguson Video Star VHS recorder, and they'd be like the rewind and pause buttons would be like worn down from pausing and rewinding at certain scenes, and people become addicted. Then the next thing they want is something harder, and a little harder, and a little easier. And so it progresses until it's wham bam thank you ma'am, and it becomes more gross and more disgusting and less romantic and less erotic. And love is where erotica is. Shagging is where pornography is. And what's happened is erotica has died and been replaced by porn, and so that's affected romance. There's a lot to do with that. Plus, I think a lot of people don't really know what romance is anymore. It's we could talk about this is a huge subject all by itself, but romantic love is something that's changed a lot over the years, and sometimes people put too much, what's the word, of themselves into it. For instance, in another life, you and me, Julie, could have had a wonderful romance that lasted a month, and it was over. And you say you left me, and my heart was broken, right? Well, the emphasis is always put on through love songs and movies, the law and everything going back to Shakespeare, the law and even the Greek mystery plays, the loss of love. Okay, but how come we're not able to remember it the way you'd remember a beautiful holiday? Like when you have a fantastic holiday, you don't go back to work and go into fits of heartbreak and convulsion because you can't go back on holiday again. And a lot of the thing to do with heartbreak, I think a lot of that could be changed. That instead of people saying, oh, we had a wonderful romance for 6 months and then it all fell apart and I'm dying without him or I'm dying without her, we should kind of retrain culture to say, wow, that was a wonderful, beautiful time and I'll always treasure it. So I think that a lot to do with it. And that's what, so that this idea that love has to last forever has fecked up women in terms of romance, and pornography, erotica gone, and pornography becoming crass has fecked up men. That's my theory. What's my favorite concept? What's my favorite fig roll dishes? Only one. Oh, Cilla Black. Yeah, Cilla Black. I always found Allah, Allah. I always found her as creepy as anything. I always found her as creepy as anything. I never understood her appeal, but and that whole thing, chuck, I have a lot, and all this kind of thing. Apparently, she hated Liverpool. Apparently, she had no desire to go back there once she left. And so when she dies, she's going. Our Cilla's going back to Liverpool. She ran away as far as she could. I definitely subscribe to the theory that she walked in on Epstein possibly having sex with someone, and back then homosexuality was criminalized in UK, and she blackmailed him, and she held it over his head to the poor man killed himself, and she always struck me as a dark bitch, and I never liked her. I've never understood why she was famous. She was scary fucking looking to begin with. I used to watch those shows like Blind Date. I never watched. I watched one or two, and I used to think people who watch those shows are mentally ill, and I think they were. So no loss there. So Peter says, do some Lovecraft stuff. I made a Lovecraft kind of video recently, but let me tell you about the Lovecraft. Let me give you an analogy about Lovecraft, right? I wrote this down for a book recently, and it's a good lesson for looking at yourself and how we are the way we are. Lovecraft stories are about, when you really think about it, what they're about is denying the darkness within us. Now, suppose you are full of, we're all full of darkness at some level, right? Here's what a New Ager does. A New Ager looks at their reflection in a river or in a pool, right? They look at their reflection, and what they see is a semi-transparent image of them, right? Below them, under the water, are all kinds of creepy crawlies, maybe alligators, piranhas, and they all represent, just like the tarot card, the moon card, they represent aspects of the subconscious that are oppressed. And so the New Ager, the healthy person, when they look at themselves in their reflection in the pool, they see themselves as semi-transparent, and they're also aware of the darkness in the bottom of the river, or darkness in the middle at the bottom of the lake or the pond. This is what the sea monster, and so they see both at the same time, and they're healthy about it because they know that that's who I am, but they see through themselves and they say, I'm, as pretty as I am, good looking as I am, and how I like to see myself as flawless. Below my semi-transparent image on the surface is all the darkness below in the water. A New Ager, or someone who's holier than thou, will see their image on the surface of the water as opaque to prevent themselves from seeing the darkness below. And what happens is that darkness will boil to the surface and consume you. And so that's why you must work with the shadow and the darkness inside you. And that's what Lovecraft is all about, but on a social level. So many of the stories, that's what the ancient ones, the monsters at the bottom of the sea are all about. They're all about the repressed aspects of himself, but he's also a reflection of New England sort of Presbyterian culture and failure to deal with the changes in America, in the poverty in America, the Indians and all. And it's all archetypal, it's all subconscious, it's all very, very Jungian. And that's what Lovecraft is really about. And that's why I think his stories now are more popular than ever and really coming back big time. And that's why there's so many things like Lovecraft role-playing games and stuff like that. Like Ark, and I love his idea of the town of Arkham. I just love that the way he created a fictional town in Massachusetts, and all the neuroses of the town poured into these allegories of monsters and everything else. It's just fabulous stuff. But that's how you should live. When you look at your reflection in the water, look at yourself as a semi-transparent reflection, being aware of the darkness below. When you see yourself as an opaque image, that's when you're fucked. Death is all around us. Superstitions, I don't know about that one. Lisanne asked about that. Giants. Amy Winehouse, Stephen asked about. Yeah, well, Amy Winehouse has a fantastic voice. I really like her records. But I always remember when she first showed up, she's a classic example of someone who was eaten alive by her fame. And that she was actually savaged by her fame. And I never understood. I never saw anyone fall apart so quickly. And they kept blaming it on her boyfriend and things like that. But it wasn't that. It was just that I'm very suspicious about her death, actually. Testicles, the left and right symmetry. Do testicles, Connor, have a left and right symmetry? When you look at the human body, there's actually not perfect symmetry. There's the brain doesn't even have, the two hemispheres of the brain don't have instinct. Terry asked about asymmetry. Terry asked about instincts and how it relates to dreams. I don't know. I have to think about that one, mate. Elizabeth on Psychopaths. I'm sick about talking. Carl Mooney asked about Irish water. Irish water are a scam. Like all public-private partnerships is a great scam. And let me tell you about that. And this all started with the European Union and their open market directives. It happened with the Maastricht Treaty, which was about 1994, I think, or 92, which opened up markets for public utilities to be sold off to private companies in what they call public-private partnerships. And let me explain to you what a public-private partnership is. The public, me and you, through our taxes, pays for a piece of infrastructure. The private partnership comes in and gets it for free and then charges a utility. That's what it is. It's an absolute scam. People spoke about the privatization of British railways, and they said it should have never happened. But the reason why British railways were privatized was there was the network was falling apart, particularly around London. Network Southeast, which is under British Rail, was falling to pieces. It was not being. Some of the carriages were over 50 years old. I can still remember in the 90s slam door carriages on the station at Victoria, the old slam door vestibule carriages. with no composite carriages, with a corridor down the side and little cubicles, and the thing was falling up. That money that money to invest in that was came from the private marketplace. So at least when privatization happened in the UK, Virgin bought their new trains, and all the other the new rail companies. They bought the new trains. They paid for them, and so it actually worked in a term of in a proper kind of way. Now I know there's problems with it and so on, but they basically British Railways are modernised in a very short time through private money, through companies like First and Virgin and all the other companies. And Irish Water is completely different. If Irish Water was to come along with Dennis O'Brien and say, "We are going to invest," I have Irish Water. I've got €1 billion. We're going to invest in buying the meters ourselves, installing the meters ourselves, fixing all the leaking pipes, and then we can charge a utility to maintain the system. But it's nothing like that at all. It's the Irish taxpayers paying for the meters, paying for the fixing of the pipes, paying for the new distribution systems, and then Irish Water just comes in and sends everybody a bill. It's an absolute scam, and that's why people are pissed off about it. And we're also paying for our water through the road taxes and things like that. Connor says, "What do you think of One Direction kids should do next?" Being in a boy band is horrible. I'm not going to tell you why I know that. I know someone who was in one, and their lives are over except for the occasional comeback. That's all that's about. They're just slaves. Simon Cowell is a bastard, piece of shit, a monster, and he's a vampire who sucks the life and blood out of these kids. They don't really make any money because they don't write the songs. They don't get the publishing, and they try to save up all the money they make from their TV and concert appearances, and then they're thrown away until the next bunch of spunk trumpets come along. You'll have the obligatory solo careers, just like all the boy bands, which will all fail miserably. Robbie Williams was a freak. That was just that happened at a right time too. People were still buying records when Robbie Williams came out of that band. What was it called? Was it Take That? I think it was Take That. And what's different now? There's no one buys records anymore, so they'll do nothing. They'll flop until there'll be an occasional comeback every few years for Pete, and they'll make a few money off that. And someone still asked about Psychopathy. Everyone's asked about. I'm sick of talking about it. A guy called Thomas says DMT and its links to alien abduction, ghosts, and Bigfoot. That's a good one because DMT. I don't believe in alien abduction, and I think ghosts and all that. So I don't know anything about Bigfoot. Ghosts, but I think Bigfoot probably exists though. There's a lot of there's a lot of compelling evidence that there probably is like some kind of giant ape humanoid in America. But anyway, that's in the wilds of America. But I don't know. Alien abduction, ghost, polter, it's all the same thing. It's some kind of non-human entity that gets into us, and DMT seems to collapse your firewall, which is why I'm against they've gone down to South America and doing the jungle juice, because you can sit there going, "The goddess of the jungle healed me," but you don't know what jumped into your consciousness asshole while you were doing it. Now to ask about ghosts, I don't know. I'll talk about it another time. Healthy foods, I don't fuck all about healthy foods. Looking down here, CERN. What do I know about CERN? Well, I know someone who worked in CERN as an electrical engineer. He was an electrical structural engineer, and he said the place is like a cult. He said it's literally like a cult. They all walk around these catatonic smiles on their faces. They have all these weird kind of meetings and high-fiving and hugging. And he said that the place doesn't seem to be necessary. He doesn't know enough. He just works on electrical engineering, so he doesn't know enough about the super collider and what it does. And so he said that CERN is basically a nerd cult. What's it up to? I don't know. But it just seems to me it seems like an addiction. Now they're talking about building an even bigger super collider. I don't know what that's about. Oh, I think the Higgs boson and all that. I don't think they actually found that thing. I think their consciousness and the wishful thinking of the scientists created that. What do you reckon about the impending economic crash? There's not going to be one. That's like the G spot. You know, the G spot in sex. The G spot for truthers is this impending economic crash. And they talk about fiat money, and they repeat everything that incoming chemtrail, global crash, warning, danger, buy gold, buy silver, Mary no stick, Mary no stick. Sorry, Derek Acorn is stuck in there. There's not going to be a crash. They'll just print more money. Do you actually think that the people who actually work in Wall Street want a crash? There's not going to be a crash. No, there's never. That's all nonsense. That's all paranoia. There will be fluctuations in the market. There will be fluctuations of cycles and all this stuff. The market will go up. The market will collapse. Inflation will go up. Inflation will go down. Balance of payments will go up. Balance of payments will go down. That's just how it works from the time of Adam Smith. That's never going to change. That's the economic system we live in. It's like a cycle. It's a cycle like a sine wave. It's supposed to go up and crash. Buy high, sell low. There's not going to be any kind of mass economic implosion caused by economics. If it happens, it's going to happen because of a natural catastrophe, an asteroid hitting the Earth, a war, or something like that. So people shouldn't be worrying about that. They shouldn't be worried about that. How did they get the figs in the fig roll? Colette asked. Well, there was a cartoon called Jim Figarty that used to see when I was a kid on Irish TV, a cartoon, an advert, and you say, how did they get the figs in the fig rolls? Jim Figarty will find out. I think it's just like it's made like a Swiss roll. Kenny, our turrets pointed at the end to really stop your arse from banging shut. That's true. The reason why turrets are tapered on either end is so your arse cheeks don't come together with a bang. Brian Duffy, bits from Prussia with Blood. I have From Prussia with Blood made in segments at the moment, but I'm not very good at video. I have no video making skills, and I don't have a good enough computer to make what I want. But it will come out, I promise. And it is good, but it's like there's also developments happening. Like the royal family when they got the pictures of the kids saluting as Nazis. It's not because the kids are evil, but it's because it's actually confirming what I'm talking about. But that is coming out. It's just I badly need management or something. I don't have resources. I don't have the resources someone like Alex Jones has, or even somewhere like Red Ice. I don't have a team. I wish I did, but I don't trust anybody. Well, really, I've had some very bad experiences giving my trust to people in the past, and I'm at the point now where I don't have that anymore. So, like, just give me time. Black Monday and how to defend against not going to happen. None of that stuff's going to ever happen. That's all made up. That's all. They will never fall apart. Don't worry about that. Satanic pedos running the flat earth. Mark said, how Jedward vanished from the media after sacking Louis Walsh. That Jedward had no talent, let's be honest. Did they sack Louis Walsh? I don't know about that. I would hate to be in a room with those three. Lorna, something mega cheerful discussing how creativity, that's a whole show. Love talking about that. Yeah, all the negative shite at the moment. Get out there and do things. Create things. Exercise is a great thing. When I say exercise, I don't mean jogging in a gym where they're playing like really bad music. I'm talking about going out in the garden and digging things, building a wall, all that kind of stuff. Just physical work is a tremendous cure for the blues. Physical work is a tremendous cure. If you can't do that, do something creative. We're coming up to autumn. Now, I've been saying this to you forever. Like, what can we do to fight the new world order? What can we do? Mary Lou Thick. What can you do to fight the new world order? We're coming up to October. We're coming up to the autumn and the summer. All the enrollments for the adult night classes are in your community colleges and your local techs and your local colleges now. They're either very inexpensive courses or they're free. Go and take a course that can teach you a useful skill. In the Irish ones, the ones around here, they're all free. And you can learn everything from masonry to computers to knitting to name it, anything. French. And they're free for adults. Or if you have a job, you pay a very small administration fee. If you're unemployed, they're all free. And if you're on a limited income, they're all free. And lots of them are free anyway. And if you live in a country that where you have to pay for them, they're usually not expensive. You want to fight the system? Go take night courses, and you'll also meet people outside this sort of like alternative world on the internet, and they're very healthy people to meet. It expands your creativity. But as well as that, I think like listening to comedy shows on YouTube is a great help as well. Yeah, I'm totally down with Lorna on that. I'll be doing more kinds of shows like that, more positive stuff, more fun, and fecking if they can't take a joke kind of stuff. Stephen says Peter Sutherland and Michael Collins in Wall Street. Peter Sutherland, the biggest globalist in the world, most powerful one in the world. Anyone who says that the Jews are the Zionists run the world, point them to Peter Sutherland and say they're wrong. Michael Collins, well, he could do a whole story at Wall Street, and that's all out. Mark wants to know about the Jindar update. Yeah, that's one that's going to come up in the next few months, the next few weeks. I have the recordings and all that stuff done together. I want to put this out there as a very neutral kind of idea, like Mark does, meta science, woo that works, and present the evidence without any conclusion. But I've had something happen a few weeks ago. I played it to a friend on Skype, and they had their headphones on, and they took the headphones off real fast, got the fright of their lives, and says, Thomas, don't do that shit anymore. So I'm kind of a little bit nervous about putting it out on the air, but I'll do it with a warning. And if I hear if anyone has their kids in the room while I'm putting the show out, it's on your own heads. And that's more fiber for hemorrhoids, yeah. Alexandria, intense lucid dreaming, feel hyper realistic and deliver feelings of immense power. I say, yeah, that's those dreams I've had those dreams. They're amazing. Ancient Celtic communism. I don't know about that one, Bob. Channeling. No one asked about channeling. I believe channeling is bogus. Not because they're not connecting to anything, but what's on the other end are liars. They will tell you anything you want to hear. Julia wants to know about how about you post this, the other words that our history goes way back. Yeah, well, you heard me here for that. It absolutely does. Greg says, could you do a mime? I don't think it'd work on the radio. You remember that show, Not the 9 o'clock news? They had Ron Atkinson when he first began doing a mime, and he was called Alternative Car Park. My body is my tool. Thomas said, you're one of the few people that talk about the problem with this awakening. People becoming super good. Oh yeah, it's a big deal. And that most don't further their basic awareness, the advantages that people like Alex Jones take because... yeah, look, the awakening thing, right? Here's the thing. The awakening, just don't believe anything you hear. That's just the end of it. Don't believe anything you hear. And again, come from inside yourself. Become your own scientist. Do your own lab work of the world around you. Don't be believing links from stories or anything like that. Dave, why are people prepared to describe accepted science, accepted physics, and accepted chemistry, and believe in chemtrails? Well, that's a tricky one because I probably know more about science than you do, and I'm still not convinced about chemtrails. Now, I don't believe for a minute that we're being gassed from above by incoming chemtrail bombers. I don't believe any of that crap. There's absolutely no proof about that. But I have no doubt, and don't tell me I'm wrong because my eyes don't lie to me, that the skies have been fucked up by all these flights. Absolutely. I don't know if it's powerful engines. I don't know if it's been changing the atmosphere, but there's so many flights now. It's changing and that's what's making people think there's chemtrails. Now I don't. That's what's making. I even hate that word chemtrails. The problem is There's so many flights today that there's so many trails in the sky. And that's what that's about. And I don't think the people are thick. I don't think anything like that. I think they're entitled to look up. Science, I don't look, let's listen to this, Dave. I know loads of people who are highly scientific. I was with James Swagger in Northern Ireland last week, and he and I were talking about induction coils. We were talking about bridge rectifiers. Both of us are electronic nuts, and he was building a wind turbine from scratch, winding his own coils, building his own, building the circuitry himself. We were sitting there talking about it. And so I'm not going to listen to someone tell me that he and I and people like us don't know about science and chemistry. We know fucking more than all these douchebags on all these skeptic blogs that you go on, who all they've ever seen is Mythbusters, right? I know for a fact that there's more to it than just basic reductionist science. And another thing, I don't care. Look, okay, I understand we can get a bit angry about things, right? I was pissed off for a while about the flat earth thing. Not because these people were wrong, but people I know that we should have been concentrating on more healthy things, and this is probably why you're pissed off the chemtrail things, should have been not wasting their time believing this nonsense, okay? But then I came to the realization that people will fucking believe anything they want. And I'm not going to waste my time getting upset about it. So do you ever think for a second that maybe you're on a kind of evangelical crusade? Do you really believe because some guy called Nigel in Milton Keynes or some kind of guy called Paddy in Longford believes in chemtrails that it's setting back science 500 years? Me arse it is. Science continues on. And just like it doesn't go backwards. People will always have different ideas, and so sometimes they're absolutely right. There's been lots of cases in history where nutcases proved the scientists were the real nutcases, and I always keep that in mind when I'm looking at this stuff. Now, I don't expect everybody to be an expert in everything, but I know a lot about the stuff that people that many of these skeptics don't know about. They may have a copy of the Mythbusters DVD or Richard Dawkins' The Selfish Gene, but I can tell you for a fact, when you start looking at things, it's very, very deeper than anything else. People often get hung up on terms. Chemtrails. They're chemtrails. No, they're not. They're not. That's what you call them. What they are aircraft trails that are fucking up the environment because there's too many flights, too many short-haul flights when they should be building. And my attitude is, right, the reason why the skies of the UK are covered in these things is because there's too many short-haul flights. What's the answer? Build a fucking high-speed rail network. That's why you do not see the same amount of trails in France that you do in the UK, because France has a vast high-speed TGV rail network where trains travel up to 300 miles an hour, 200 odd miles an hour, and you don't have to, and it's actually put regional airports and short-haul flights out of business within France, and that's the answer. Instead of actually sitting there pointing fingers, going it's this, that, and the other, getting hung up in terms, start looking for reasons you can stop it completely. And there are flights that are not on transponders. I've seen them fly over here in Ireland. I've seen them fly overhead. They're not on the transponders. They are military aircraft. What they're doing, I don't know, but they do leave the big ass trails. So it's not all black and white on either side. And I'm not really that interested in it anyway. But to say that that's going to actually demolish, hundreds of years of science, it's not going to happen. What is it the Irish and their sentimental songs about people and dying? Oh, well, the Irish love death. Oh God, Chad, we love funerals. We love wakes. Irish, because our culture and our ancestry does not believe in death. It does not believe in death. Ireland was a land once of 5 provinces: Ulster, Munster, Leinster, and Connacht, and Meath. And people used to think that Meath was the area around Messmead and Meath. No, Meath was the province of the other world. and that's where you went. That's why you have legends of like Tyrion and Og and High Brasil. The Irish, like the Hindus, again, back to the Vedics at the start of the show, they do not subconsciously they see death as like a wedding or a party or something like that, and that's why we're not hung up on it. We're not hung up on death in the same way. Yeah, it's tragic when someone young dies and things like that, and when people suffer before they die. But the Irish are not. They're not. They're not sent into a world of darkness by death itself. They're not afraid of the other side of the threshold because there's something subconsciously in them that knows there's more to this. I can't explain it. I don't really what it's about. And so like it's the old joke, like the German guy saying, I don't mean to offend any German people out there, that the old joke of the German going, "You Irish, you're constantly obsessed with death. You're always going to funerals." And the Irish fellow replies, "Well, that's because we tend to bury one person at a time." So anyway, that's been a bit of an hour and a half show tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't boring or anything like that. But again, thanks for listening in. Thanks for Paula for running the extra half an hour over. I hope you have a lovely week. Stay positive. There's not going to be any kind of end of the world or anything like that. If there's a problem in this world, you work to address it. You don't run in fear of it and feck them if they can't take it.